Hey, what's up, guys? You are listening to the Bands vs. Artists podcast. This is Patrick.
This is Justin.
Who?
I'm the other guy
that
does vocals in Process of Fusion. We're here without Dylan today. We're talking to Garrett Russell of the band Silent Planet. We are so pumped because we saw Thrice last night and went to WOHOP.
Yes.
If you don't know what WOHOP is, well, we're not going to tell you. You just got to go to New York City and find out for yourself. It has to do with Asian cuisine at all times of the night. That's all I'll tell you. And they make t-shirts. But anyway, Thrice was amazing. We really love Thrice. Our guest actually loves Thrice too. And yeah, that's it. This is a good one. So stay tuned, and that's all I got for you.
Yeah, cancel any plans you have for the next hour because you're going to want to sit down and really savor this one.
Epic. The Band vs. Artists podcast is brought to you by the Kings of A&R website, a place where musicians and artists alike can go to find out the tastemakers of the industry. Learn something new at Kings of A&R. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Justin and Patrick from the Band vs. Artists podcast, and we are here with Garrett Russell from the band Silent Planet. What's up, Garrett?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Good to be here.
It's good to have you, finally. For our listeners, I've interviewed Garrett twice before, and we always have really deep, awesome conversations, so I knew he had to join us on the podcast. Let's do it again.
Let's run it back.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I met you at the PlayStation Theater in the fall, and Patrick and I were there last night seeing Thrice, so it's kind of appropriate timing.
Is the PlayStation Theater another word for the Gramercy Theater?
No, different theater.
But the PlayStation Theater used to be the Nikon.
So we met at the Gramercy. I believe we were at the Gramercy.
Was it Gramercy?
I think so, just because I've never been to the PlayStation Theater.
So maybe I lied, but it looked exactly the same on the inside.
Yeah, there are seats at Gramercy too, but it's a little smaller.
Yeah, they got like an upper deck.
Yeah.
They have like an upper deck, yeah.
So does the PlayStation. All right, I guess I'm wrong.
You'd probably remember the PlayStation Theater is in Times Square, so I feel like you'd probably remember being in Times Square.
I remember the Gramercy, it was in Manhattan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
First time we've ever played in Manhattan. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about my New York geography. I did skate to the Empire State Building for fun.
It's cool.
But, that day. It's cool, man. One of the fun things about tour, which doesn't really happen until your band gets a little bigger, to be honest, and I say that because I wouldn't be saying this a year ago, but because of the neat tours we've been able to go on, which not really a testament to my band being very cool, but more so a testament to the dudes in Four Today being awesome. But when you get to play bigger venues, you know, you start to really, like, I feel like get a better taste for, like, really get a better taste for, like, America, you know what I mean? Because, like, when you're doing the small band thing, you kind of just, like, you know, play a small bar in the middle of nowhere, and it's always in, like, the outskirts of a big city or just in some random small town. And then, you know, when all of a sudden, like, For Today's super sick and they, like, give you the opportunity to tour with them, you're, like, you know, playing in Manhattan and just like, whoa, dude, this is, like, New York.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it's cool. It's cool to you know, play, you know, downtown Minneapolis and really get into cities because we've kind of been grinding for so long. I feel like we've seen very much like the country side of America and now the city side of America. And when we last hung out, I was just still getting acquainted to this whole, like, whoa, you know, there's going to be more than 50 people here, and, you know, there's going to be, like, catering and we're going to get paid at the end of the night, and all these kind of things that, you know, it's easy to take for granted, I'm sure, but I never want to forget the days of small, low-level touring when none of that was ever expected or freely given.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, too, because going back to Thrice, I posted about it on Twitter, and one of my coworkers said, I remember Thrice from 15 years ago. He said, I booked them at a local venue. at a max capacity of 40 people. He said, and the next time I saw them, they were playing in front of 10,000 people. So
Jeez.
we all start somewhere.
It is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And to be honest, first of all, a band as good as Thrive. Second of all, a band as accessible as Thrive to a larger market. And third, in that day and age, when honestly being in a band was just better than it is today for so many reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, you would see that happen. Our guitarist Mitchell, his dad booked Memphis May Fire like a show on like one of their first tours, like in a pizza shop for like 50 people. And obviously that band isn't as big as Thrice, or maybe not. I don't like them quite as much as Thrice, but it's also remarkable to see how they just like shot out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you guys too are getting there, man. From every time that I talk to you, it's maybe about 6 or 7 months between conversations, and I see that you guys are doing quite well right now and getting a lot of recognition in Silent Planet, and that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. I can tell you for sure that I've learned the hard way that this one sort of truth is going to be the case for Silent Planet, that I believe that we will continue to grow for quite some time, but I believe it's going to be one of the more like steady, trackable growth you ever see in a band, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because of how we're choosing to do things and stuff, and we don't want like a label or like a cool manager or a cool corporate sponsor to just say, hey, you guys, time to be famous.
Right.
And, crams us down the throats of a few million people on the daily until, you're popular. And that's just not really our path. I don't look down on bands who have had that path. And there's a lot of them. We're on Warped Tour with a lot of those bands too. I'm very aware that, they had that moment of, someone deciding that, hey, I'm going to make you famous. That's just not the path that the Lord has given us. And it's cool because I do think it keeps us humble, because nothing is ever going to come without sacrifice. And of course, I believe, as a Christian, that there's no love without sacrifice. You don't really know if you love a girl that you're dating or something until, you have to really, give up something, whether it's, time or money or energy, and really substantially give up yourself to serve that person. I don't know if you love them until then, because love certainly isn't something that happens on our own time. I think love involves what we give. So anyway, sorry for this little meandering rant, but long story short, I'm so thankful for the growth, but I'm also excited because it feels honest. It feels sustained. You know what I mean? It feels like it's just kind of going to keep coming as we work hard, but without the hard work, it'll stop, and that's good. I want to keep having to work hard and keep figuring out merch designs before every tour, and keep getting our van checked out and doing all the stuff that we have to do as a group to make this possible.
Yeah. Did you guys, speaking of vans, did you guys have a chance to upgrade the van, or you still have the same van?
No, same van. We did actually 3 days ago buy a new trailer though, because our trailer, I don't know if you remember, it's super, super funny. It said it was a globe. It was a world with bulging biceps, and it said world bodybuilding, all natural, and it was the least natural set of biceps I've ever seen illustrated. But it said all natural bodybuilding, and it had a phone number and a supplement company. And dude, we've had so many funny. I've had so many conversations with middle-aged men who were like, "Dude, you run the gym? Do you want to train me?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then I would give them our guitarist's number, and our guitarist would just be like, "Why is a guy named Fred asking me to teach him how to lift weights? I've never lifted weights a day in my life." And I would just be like, "Dude, that's weird, man. I don't know." And to this day, I don't actually know if they know that. Every time I've ever been asked about my company, I'm like, "Yeah, that number on the trailer's outdated, bro. here it is, and just like give them someone's phone number.
Oh my god.
Pretty childish of me, but
That's amazing.
No, these are the kind of stories that you can only get on a podcast. This is perfect.
Dude, for sure. Yeah, I love it, man. Podcasts are so much cooler. You know, I think artists are really starting to tend towards like wanting to do podcasts, because it kind of sucks when, like, you know, you get an interview and someone's like, "What's the name of your band? How did you come up with the name of your band? You know, do you like to play rock shows? You know, or how long have you been playing your label?" And it's not a kind of thing that like it's wrong, but it is like, you know, I mean, you could Google this.
Yeah.
You know, and I have seen for sure, like, sometimes artists get very kind of quiet and dismissive, and everyone thinks that they're being an asshole in the interview. And I'm not going to argue. I mean, you know, maybe they are being an asshole, but I think sometimes it's because the person interviewing them isn't like trying to get an original interview. They just kind of are going through a script.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So anyways, podcasts are sick because it's just a conversation.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I know. I remember we spoke about that at length. I think the first time we spoke to you, just about the generic questions, and like
I
you
told
said,
you how much I appreciated the interview.
yeah, like you said, you could just Google these things. I mean, if everyone's asking it, but I guess since we are on the topic of Vans, and you mentioned Warped Tour and just making moves as an artist. You have a new album coming out. I'm telling you, as if you don't know. It's Everything Was Sound. And as I think you revealed to me last time I spoke to you, and now I guess the cat's out of the bag, the album is about mental illness. So
yeah.
Next to that question, all I have is the word discuss. So please discuss.
Yeah. You know, so The Night God Slept, started writing that song, like to write about when I'd finished my undergraduate education, and then wanted to. I got into psychology, and as I was as I was like finishing up the psych program, we like finished the record and started to figure out how to put it out. But you know, I really wanted to write more substantially about mental illness, but I also knew that would be more difficult for me because mental illness gets a little more personal and a little more emotional, I think. And I've always kind of wanted to write about like historical events, and, you know, emotional's fine, but I don't want to be like, you know, I mean, I think a lot of bands in our genre are often kind of writing about mental illness. I mean, primarily, I would say just depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of the more emotionally loaded disorders, mood disorders. But you know, I knew that I wanted to write about it, but I was also nervous because I was like, you know, I also want to talk about history, and I still want to talk about world events and politics and religion and God and all these different things. And so what I really realized is that my conception, I think all of our conception of mental illness is a little bit limited, and it's very modernistic. And what I mean by that is we kind of have categories. You know, it's like, well, you have bipolar, you know, type A, type B, or you suffer from a schizotypal disorder, and we have all these categories. And I understand why they exist, so that, you know, mental health professionals can basically have a shared language that corresponds to symptoms. But ultimately, I think a lot of things we don't see as mental illness because mental illness is very economic, is very, you know, very much an economic term. And what I mean by that is, you know, someone's considered mentally ill if they are kind of unfit to fit into society. And what that means is basically you're not being a productive member of society. You know, you're not someone who's buying things and selling things or working, you know. And so a lot of people, I think, are very unwell. I mean, I'll be frank with you. I look at a lot of politicians, you know, Donald Trump being one of them, but there's a lot of them. But, like, I think Donald Trump has narcissistic personality disorder, like, straight up.
Yeah.
The only thing is, he's a billionaire, and he doesn't need to get along with people. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He can like lie and then say, no, I didn't say that. But he has enough money and enough fame that like, who's gonna like, how's that actually hurting him? You know? And so, you know, we would look at him and say, well, he doesn't actually have a mental disorder. You know, that guy in the street has a mental disorder, but maybe that guy in the street didn't inherit millions of dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
A small loan of $1 million.
Yeah, a small loan, you know. And it's not to like criticize anyone. I mean, trust me, I don't think that either of the two major party candidates we're given are fit to be president or are safe people to trust. But I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of things like, I mean, you know, fear of people of a whole religion, or our belief that, you know, maybe it is okay to have a military presence in a certain country if it guarantees us oil contracts and it keeps us, you know, with low gas prices. Like these kinds of things that a lot of people would accept as normal, I would say are actually sick, which I would say like, I would want to think of mental illness not so much as like, you know, do you fit into society, but like, are you able to treat all human beings with dignity, love, and respect? And so I think there's a lot of social illnesses, and I think a really damning example of how we have a culture in America that breeds a disorder that we see as a disorder is anorexia nervosa. It's easily the most lethal mental disorder because lots of young women are dying from it every year. And I think it really goes back to how we see sex, how we see food, how we see body image, how beauty is something that's sold in magazines, how perfectionism, you know, and this idea that like if I get the smaller I get, the closer to perfect I get. Where in reality that's sick, and you see that, you know, and it's really, I think you see our culture becoming embodied in the lives of young women who should be having the time of their lives in high school, but instead are starving themselves to death and thinking that it'll make them more beautiful and more desired. And so all that to say, you know, I think I'm really interested in that intersection of psychology, which we normally see as a private practice, and then sociology, or really looking at the world that we live in and wanting to see maybe, I don't know, you know, think of mental illness as a culture-wide thing. And that's kind of what we did with some of these songs, and what also I think enabled me to continue to write stuff that isn't just about my own experience or just one person's experience, but kind of a culture. And so some songs I think are a little more of what you consider the private illnesses, and some of them are maybe more of the public illnesses. You know, one example of private might be schizophrenia, or you know, suicide, but then which have very cultural things too. But then it'll go all the way to maybe orphan, which is talking about our need for warmth and our fear of each other. So yeah, that is my answer to disgust. Sorry about that. That was also very long. That was very long. I apologize.
No, that's
No, it was a
fine.
fantastic
That's deep,
answer.
man.
Yeah.
And now, a word from our sponsors. And we'd like to give a special shout out to our sponsor of the BandVsArtists podcast, Computer Sam. If you have problems with your tablet, your phone, your computer, or pretty much anything electrical, Computer Sam's got your back. So check out computersam.nyc for more reasonably priced service for your electronics. Okay, so the record comes out on, was it July 1st?
Yeah, July 1st.
July 1st.
I think we'll be in like North Carolina or something when that happens.
So you'll be in the middle already, or starting in the beginnings of Warped Tour, right? When does that kick off?
Yeah, it kicks off on June 24th. It kicks off June 24th in Dallas, Texas. And so we'll just be like a weekend at Warped Tour.
Oh, okay. And so far, the early songs that you guys released was first Panic Room, then Psychscape, and then Orphan. I love the videos for Panic Room and Orphan because like visually and lyrically, it's like your videos. You guys like almost put out short movies, which I think is so awesome. And Psychscape.
Well, thank you. So much of the credit for that goes to our good friend Kevin Johnson, who makes it all possible, man. I'll tell you what, we're very, very thankful to be able to work with him.
So he does all your videos?
Well, he just started.
Okay.
Panic Room was his first independent music video ever. How crazy is that?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was his very first, and you'll be seeing a lot more videos for him. He actually just shot a video for King, and he's gonna go shoot a video for Aaron Gillespie's like solo stuff. Which I guess maybe all that stuff. Yeah, I don't think that's that much of a secret. Anyways, he's he's very talented, and he pours himself into his work. Man, he's so positive. He's so good at communicating, and what's cool is he's done a great job of like. I do get pretty involved. You know, I was like, well, what if we have these 2 men and stuff? And I'll have an idea, then he'll run with it, then I'll run with it. And as far as the writing goes and the kind of the overall story and stuff, it's a very collaborative experience. But then obviously he has the visual know-how to make it like look cool, whereas I could never make that look very cool. So, yeah, he's the man.
I wanted to ask you, it kind of just dawned on me, like a song like Panic Room is obviously about post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I know you have, your background on psychology and things like that, but for writing this next batch of songs, did you speak to anyone who had some of these mental disorders, or is this research or?
Absolutely. I would say what's very meaningful about this record, and hopefully for other people too, is a lot of people, a lot of our previous records, it was very much like I'm like researching, I'm reading books, I'm looking articles up, it was very private, and because that was largely before we started touring like a lot when I started writing the last record. What's cool about this record is a lot of the writing started in music venues. People coming up to me and telling me their story. Specifically, PTSD it was dedicated to our friend Gerald Clark, who's still serving in the military, and saw some pretty horrific combat situations in Afghanistan. And he had shared with me briefly his story in Nashville and asked me to pray for him, but really we started corresponding over email and text, and that's when he really opened up and told me this insane story of what having to kill someone, and what his experience of that is. And he's so brave and honest and didn't omit details or try to make it sound like, oh, hoorah, I don't mind killing people, because in reality, killing people isn't what we were made to do, and it does something to people, I think, and what. So that was a song that came out of that, and a lot of this record is inspired by other people, and by talking to them, still some of them are more based on like characters, whether fictitious or historical. But yeah, this album I would say is a lot more like personal in that way. And I hope that people see like, hey man, this is your record, and this is what we want Silent Planet to be. We want it to be an invitation to collaborate, and we want people to feel to be a part of it, not just feel a part of it, but we really do want people to be a part of this story, because that's been what keeps us going and keeps this fun for me after doing this for 7 years. Yeah.
And the next track that you guys put out was Psychscape, and I know how much you love Under Oath and how much Under Oath has meant to you. So having Spencer on that track, like, what was that like? How did that come about?
Having Spencer on the song was surreal. He's so good, so talented. Everything, all of his vocal parts you hear on that record were almost all one take. And the funny thing about that is they weren't one take because he was like, hey guys, let's get this over with. I'm busy. Like, he was super down. And like, we just spent the first couple hours of the whole time together, like just talking about the song, talking about lyrics, talking about the approach. And really, like, some of my lyrics changed because of his lyrics, and he had some ideas that changed when he saw my lyrics, and we really just hung out and ate Chinese food together for like a few hours and talked about stuff. and Ben really got into the track. But dude, when he started recording, he just was like, boom, and like kills it, and looks over, he's like, hey, how's that? And we're all just like, holy crap, we just watched Spencer like do things that I will never be able to do. Just really so talented. And so collaborating with him was a pretty surreal experience, and something that we're so thankful for.
Yeah, it's pretty cool you actually got to do the collaboration in person. I know a lot of times it's like you get someone on a track and they just go to a studio and they send you the files from wherever they are. But that's
we cool. Our other guest vocalist on this record, which I don't actually know if we've announced, this is probably the first time I said it, is Corey Brandon from Norma Jean.
Okay.
And he's on a song called Nervosa. And it's funny because we actually knew him before this. We met Spencer as he came into the studio. Now we're homies. But it's kind of funny because with the whole, with how everything went down, with Corey Brandon, it was very like, it was kind of like, like we sent him a recording and stuff, and we collaborated over text and email and stuff. But we have a previous history with each other of like touring and stuff. So it was a bit more. But he was in Minneapolis and then Arkansas when he did it. So it was a little puppy. His little puppy barking.
He's under attack, everyone. Did you get to catch Underoath on their Rebirth tour?
Yes. Yeah. We saw them play at So What Fest, which we were also playing that day. So they were obviously the finale of So What Fest this year in Dallas, Texas. And unfortunately, that's the only one we got to see because we were on tour. So any of the shows that came to California, we were somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great to see them. Cool. I definitely crowd surfed during Dangerous Business.
Nice.
And it was cool. It was very cool. I was crowd surfing, and Spencer saw me and he smiled at me and he was like, "You dirty dog." So yeah, it was cool. It was great. Those guys are awesome, and it's a really big shout out. Working with Spencer kind of came out of our friendship with Chris, their keyboardist, which, as a lot of people know, is probably the nicest dude in a famous band you'll ever see. He's just he's the ultimate homie. He's always just been the dude standing outside of venues, hanging out with kids, just so cool. And kind of funny because since Underoath first broke up and now, he's gone from being a kind of pudgy dude to being the most athletic freak in the world. Mm-hmm. But he's still the same sweet softy inside.
I can't believe he doesn't have brain damage from the way he headbangs on the keyboard.
Know.
And that he still has a keyboard left.
Yeah, that he still has the keyboard. We saw them in New Jersey, and one of our friends actually got his head busted open.
In the pit,
Yeah, in the pit. And he took a nice bloody selfie in the bathroom and then went back into the pit. So, shout out to our friend Ricky. You made it onto the podcast, Ricky.
Shout out to Ricky, dude. Yeah, no, that's Chris. He's always been just so all about loving people's shows, positivity, man. Really done a lot, I think, to be I mean, they're all cool dudes. He's such a human face. It's such a almost immortalized project. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And to kind of switch gears a little bit, and I guess it's still on the mental illness topic, let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on the recent tragedies that have happened in Florida with you had Christina Grimmie, the singer, who was gunned down by somebody who actually, today I read an article, had some mental obsession with her. And then you had what happened in the Orlando nightclub. So I guess what are your thoughts on that as sort of as a mental illness or as a tragedy?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the most most disappointing part of how most of these things go down for me is it's so easy for people to politicize this so quickly. And yeah, it's not to say that, you know, it's not a matter of like, could more guns or less guns have prevented this tragedy, or a matter of, you know, like, are some Muslims or no Muslims terrorists, or whatever, like, whatever people feel like the issue at hand is. I think what we see with this whole thing, though, is it's very, very difficult for people in America to mourn tragedies. And this is something that I remember psychology professors talking to me about, how we don't really know how to mourn the loss of life in a society that's so fast-paced and productive. It's like we quickly, like, while people are still like fighting for their life in their hospital, instead of like, you know, talking about those people, we quickly want to know, okay, who did it? Why did he do it? And like, what do the politicians say about it? And, oh, you disagree with me about this thing, so we're not friends anymore? And it's like, holy shit, like, we just experienced incredible tragedy as a culture, and people are getting more divided by that. Like, that's how hate wins, you know? Like, when you know, when all of a sudden, I don't know, like, people who were friends, or, you know, like, people in the same music scene all of a sudden, like, start calling each other names and thinking each other are stupid because they disagree about gun control. Like that sucks. That really sucks. But that's how we deal with these things. And I would say a lot of it's the news entertainment industry, and it's entertainment. A lot of the times it's not news, but they really excite that. You know, they say, well, did you know that Democrats think this? Like, whoa, Democrats are stupid. You should be really mad about that. Or same thing, you know, did you know that those stupid, like, conservative Christian or, you know, like, you know, rednecks in the Deep South are saying this right now about Muslims? Like, man, like, find a conservative person today and tell them they suck. You know, it's just so crazy. And it's one of those things that absolutely, like, political measures could be taken to make things better. And anytime I've ever brought that up in Silent Planet, people are like, oh, so you just want to sit around and pray about it, or you just want to sit around and feel sad you don't want to do anything? Well, it's like, no, but I also don't want to be an asshole on the internet. Like, I don't think that's going to do anything for us either.
Yeah.
You know, at least pointing out that I think we have a real spiritual deficiency that makes it difficult for us to, like, deal with these things is probably a huge part of the problem. And makes it worse that a lot of religious people are blaming other religions. They're saying, oh, well, gay people are bad. Anyway, just, like, really disgusting, wrong things on that, too. So, you know, it's one of those things that I definitely don't even have the answer, know what to say. And when it happened, I just got on our Facebook and posted a link to donate blood for anyone in Florida and said, hey, you know, please do that and let us give you some merch. And I guess if you're hearing that, it still stands. So if you're in Florida or in that general region and you want to, and you're listening to this and you're able to donate blood, please do. You can go to oneblood.org and make an appointment, because sometimes they need blood, sometimes they don't. But when they don't have the blood that they need, which usually happens a couple weeks after the tragedies, after everyone forgets about it, it's still a huge need. And there's going to be people who are in the hospital for years now because of this. And, you know, if you want to really do something, man, giving blood's a great way to do it. So, yeah, anyways, that's sorry for that quick plug. But that's kind of my thought.
No, man, that's awesome. That really is awesome, because it's just I like, and not just because, you know, we're talking to you now, but I like how sort of your mind works, that as you're explaining to us not to get on social media and kind of talk about your feelings right away, that your first instinct was to tell people to just go give blood at the end of your what you were saying. So that was pretty cool. So thank you for that.
I definitely had, by the time it happened, people were already, like, half the tweets I saw were about gun control, whatever. I mean, definitely the most disgusting thing I saw was Donald Trump, basically, more or less, I don't remember the tweet, but says, like, you know, I already said that this would happen, something about immigration, or guns, or whatever.
Pretty much an I told you so.
Like, yeah, it was pretty much an I told you so, and I don't think that's me putting words in the situation. I forget the exact tweet, but it was definitely, like, was a childish "I told you so." I don't think there's any way around it, and that was pretty disgusting. And she kind of epitomized the problem. It's not that she was the only person doing the "I told you so."
Right.
You know, I've learned the hard way that anytime you speak ill, like let's say you say, well, I think Hillary Clinton lies a lot, which I think you could back up. If you say that, people automatically think that you're a Donald Trump supporter, and they say, well, she's better than Trump. Or you say, you know, Donald Trump is he's bordering on fascism right now, as he's talking about like media not being able to like say what they want to say, and people are like, well, anyone but Hillary Clinton, and it's just like, yo, like. Both of these people suck, but you should be able to speak your mind about one person lying without being told, well, this person also lied, so that kind of makes it okay, or that makes it, something that isn't worth talking about. It's like, dude, we're not going to get anywhere as long as we're like stuck with two options.
Right.
And anytime we try to like deconstruct what's going on, or saying like, dude, these options are really, really not either of them. I don't think are healthy for democracy. People are quickly going to be like, yeah. Assuming that means that you're on the other side. It's like, dude, should I just be on humanity's side real quick and say that I don't want any of this, and like I'm not going to vote for either of these? It's like that South Park episode with like the giant douche, or the douche and the giant turd. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
It was like that was the most brilliant metaphor for American elections. Like these kids at the elementary school have to vote between the douche and the turd for like their school mascot.
They predicted the future. That episode really did predict the future.
It really did. I'm trying to think. Did it come out? Did it come out before? Was that for the Romney-Obama election, or was that Obama-McCain?
I think it might have been Obama-McCain. I feel like that's a pretty old one. Yeah.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah.
And that wasn't nearly as bad as what's now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I not even. I mean, that is a statistical fact that an election has never been so bad. You just look at the disapproval or the strongly disliked side, and I think Trump, when I saw it, was at an all-time high. He was at 62%, and Clinton was the second highest, and she was at like 58 or something. So, pretty remarkable. I mean, I've never actually seen anyone say I love Donald Trump. I've only seen people say, better than Hillary. And I've seen very few people say they love Hillary, and they just simply say she's not Trump. But yeah. It's pretty weird when, like, and it's sad. I think it shows a real lack of creative imagination, for sure. I think if I ever had a doubt that the culture in America does not lend itself to creative problem solving, I would show you this election and show you, like, the arguments being pretty 5-year-olds, like, I don't like this person because they did this and it's wrong. It's like, yeah, well, your person did this. It's just so wild. It's like, man, this sucks. We're supposed to be adults here. And I don't know. I think it reflects a lot of our imagination.
Yeah. It's funny you say that about Trump because, we're in New York City, so we're obviously it's a very democratic city, but where we actually live, have you heard of Staten Island?
Staten Island? Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, so Staten Island is one of is what they call it the forgotten borough of New York City. So while you have like Brooklyn and Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx, they're all super democratic, Staten Island is super conservative, well, for the most part. So when you drive around over here, you actually see like the Trump signs on people's lawns, and there's a lot of people in Staten Island that are like hardcore Donald Trump. So
interesting.
So when we go on our Facebooks, it's either people still hoping for Bernie Sanders, or it's people saying Trump all the way, and it's almost 0% of anybody supporting Hillary Clinton.
I've never seen anybody on any social media site of mine, any friends or followers, just say, this is my candidate, I'm with her. I've never seen someone say that.
I saw like one person, and it's because, and my theory is it's because she was born in Illinois and now lives in New York City. but actual New Yorkers, it's like the Bernie Sanders for the young people, mostly the young people, and then Donald Trump for the older conservative Staten Island people.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, America's very divided, and people are sick of having the same old out of Washington D.C. I think, and so I think part of what's going on too is people just want something different, something new, and I personally think that Bernie Sanders was exciting. It's weird because I don't agree with a lot of his more socialist-leaning policies. I have a lot of actually libertarian friends who were okay with the idea of Bernie Sanders. It's funny because socialism and libertarianism obviously are opposite economic theories, and they're opposite government theories. But where that came into play is I think a lot of people finally saw someone who was being honest and actually believes what they're saying, has been saying the same thing for a long time, and was being an independent, which I really think is cool, that he wasn't really just doing what he was told to by his Democratic or Republican overlords, but he was just acting on his conscience. And, you see stuff like him, getting dragged out by cops for protesting segregating housing, and it's just how can you not be moved, at least, by that person's humanity and compassion? And I can't help but think I'd rather have a president, struggle to pass any of these bills with Congress, but at the end of the day know that a legitimate human is in office, than either of these two, more or less, I'd say, moral monsters that we're being faced with.
All right, so I guess to wrap it up, I have one final question for you that has nothing to do with politics or music or anything. This is, I guess, a theological question. So I've noticed more and more, even artists that would be considered in the Christian artist spectrum, there's lots of people really struggling and coming to grips with the idea of a God being real and a God existing.
Yeah, of course.
And when you have tragedies like things that happen in Orlando, or you even have the craziness of humanity just found in the election that makes you feel like there can't be a God. What would be your, I guess, thought or concept to say, this is how I can prove that there is a God?
I would say that I can't. Just as much as I don't think anyone can prove that there is no God, because proving a negative isn't really possible. I would say to people, I can't prove that there is a God. I think that in my interpretation of so much of what we see in the world of tragedy, of loss, of the incredibly remarkable fact that we're floating in this sphere rock through time and space, and that we exist, even though the conditions for life are pretty insane. The more that we learn about science, it's more than just oxygen or distance from the sun. There's I think over 100 at this point necessary conditions for life, and we know of maybe a couple other planets that would be possible in the entire galaxy. And so I think there's something pretty special happening, and I do think that if science goes further, that atheism perhaps will be slightly more abandoned in favor of agnosticism. That people will be there's something going on, but I'm probably not going to find it in organized religion. And I would tell people, I think that's probably true. I think that organized religion will mostly die, at least as we see it in its current form, because organized religion very often fails to integrate. And I believe that there's different movements of humanity. And so science was obviously born out of modernism, the idea that everything can be reduced to explainable parts. Mm-hmm. And emergent properties don't exist, and there's more or less a binary. understanding of how everything works. And I think that shows with, for instance, our American political imagination is very modernistic. Like, do you want A or B? Do you want her or him? You know, and I believe that we're moving, that philosophy in literature and art has moved into postmodernism, and understanding science in postmodernism is much more difficult. And but it is happening with quantum physics, a lot of people would say, and it's happening with string theory, just the different like very kind of trippy things that aren't quite as much about reducing blood parts, but actually trying to understand the emergent properties. I believe neuroscience actually will be moving from modernism to postmodernism as we understand that there's these emergent properties happening in the electrical outputs of the brain, and you can't understand them in a binary system. And then finally, I believe there's the integrative movement of humanity, and that's understanding the oneness of things. And that's not to sound like some crazy, person who like lights incense and smokes weed and just sits in their living room all day. But to understand how everything is connected, and to understand that I believe organized religion will kind of fail because it's very modernistic still. And I believe an integrative spirituality involves understanding God through art, through science, through history, through literature, through relationships, through the brain, and understanding God everywhere. And so I think for me, I feel like I would be misleading people to say like, this is who God is and this is how I can prove God, because I would be entering into like a very modernistic discourse, if that makes sense. And I want people to understand the fullness and the dynamic nature of God, who is bigger than even Christianity. And that's not to say I am a Christian, so I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and I believe that if you want to know who God is, you come closer to Jesus, that Jesus is the path to God. And Jesus is God. And so coming to know Jesus is to know God. However, the word Christianity obviously is a loaded term, full of history, full of different politics, full of different very sad things and very cool things, But it's a very particular movement in humanity, and I want people to know Jesus of the gospel without even feeling like they have to go through organized religion to know God. Because I think a lot of people might not use all these silly terms like modernism, postmodernism, integrative spirituality. A lot of people won't use these terms, but that's essentially what I hear kids saying around venues around America right now. I hear them saying like, I can't believe that God would just be, like, I just have to go to this church and do this, and then I'll know God. Because that's true. There's no experience with how a lot of people see religion. Now, that's to be said. There's a lot of people in a lot of religions who know God a lot better than I ever will. So it's not that religion is the antithesis of knowing God, as much as I think for some people they have a sense that they need that if there's a God, they would want to know God in a very real and dynamic way. And I encourage those people to read the gospel and to try to block out everything that they've been taught, like, oh, well, this means this, or if you start believing in Jesus, you got to start doing this, and just come to know like the fullness, and come to know like the absolute revolution that Jesus started. Because I do believe that Jesus started a revolution, and this revolution is the only revolution that will live on. I think Bernie Sanders is great, but Bernie Sanders' revolution will die. It's already kind of dying, to be honest. But the revolution of Jesus and this third way approach to our binaries, and the seeing all people as humans, and tearing down the veil in half that says only a priest can know God, and then the priest can tell us about God, and saying God loves all and all can know God. Jesus left this earth saying, you will do even greater things in my name. But Jesus raised the dead. So it's like, well, I don't even know what that means, like greater things, because that was pretty great. And feeding thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish, that's pretty great. And to think that we'd be called into such a radical spirituality, that would happen, it's like, man, like I think we've only reached like barely the cusp of what Jesus was talking about. And for some people, I do think religion got in the way of that. So all that to say, man, in the wake of all of this, I want people to know the radical relationship that I found. But that's not something that I can ever point them towards a single system. And I don't feel guilty saying that because I don't want to mislead anyone. But I do want people to know that anything good I've ever seen in my life and all creativity in my life has come from a divine experience of Jesus. So, yeah.
As usual, you do not disappoint me with the knowledge that you decide to drop on answering a question.
Well, I hope I wasn't going on too long, but I guess sometimes I have things that I feel like make sense, but then it means you have to say something else, and then you have to say something else, and then all of a sudden you're talking for 10 minutes and feeling like an idiot.
No,
sorry about that.
That was all great. I think what's frustrating for me is like kind of coming from a very conservative Christian background, and not necessarily orthodox, but conservative in a way where, like, I think that's what you were speaking about is closer to the way I understand it now, and the way I'm kind of willing to understand it. But what's frustrating is if you were to try to speak like that to someone who's in the church now, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to give you the time of day because they're still so stuck in the idea of organized religion that it's anything that's even slightly anything that slightly contradicts the black and white is just kind of dismissed as not true or not possible.
Yeah, you get the, he's just lost, or they're just lost. You got to pray for them to come back or whatever. But like on the other spectrum, that person is trying to have like this real experience too. It's like I don't feel lost. Like just because you're hearing, I guess if you want to say that you're hearing from God in one way, maybe God has been revealed to you in a certain way, and you don't feel like that you're wrong. You feel like you're hearing and being led by something else. But as Patrick said, if you go against the status quo, you're this person's lost, or they're new age, or they're this or that, or they just don't know.
It's a lot of us versus them. It's a lot of like people are tracking with you, and then you say a certain word that they've been told anyone who says this word is like out to get them, and then you lose them, and then they begin to fear you. They begin to see you as other, just in the same mentality as like, if you criticize Donald Trump or something, people are like, "Oh, you're just another stupid libtard or something." And it's like, wow, like I said something that was out of your scope of how you see things, and so now you have hatred for me, or you have fear towards me. And I think, man, if God is who God is discussed to be in the Bible, and if God is truly eternal, and is truly fully knowing and fully powerful and fully loving, and Jesus is who Jesus said he was, and what is said to be said about Jesus is true, man. Like, God is so great and so infinite that there's no way that we, I think, could ever like logically look at any of our situations, any church, and say like, well, we're perfect, or we have definitive knowledge. Or like you were saying, people have different perspectives. Like, what if both things are true? We create situations where it's like, well, either this person has it right or this person has it right. But what if they both have it right? What if, like, infinity doesn't correspond to our logic? That things that we see is like you're either going left or right. But infinity is so great that infinity is just like, dude, there's no left or right. Like, there's God. And man, like, it sucks, dude. We put out this orphan music video, and I saw like probably 4 or 5 different people being like, either like, I thought Silent Planet was a Christian, or like, this guy's so annoying. Like, he says he's a Christian, but now he's clearly a liberal. And it's so sad. It's just like, man, like, to me, that disrespects not only like what God is teaching me, but in return God. And I've done that so many times, dude. I've looked at conservative churches or other cultures or whatever, and I've said like, well, there's no way that's right. And I feel like I disrespected what God is teaching them, and in return disrespected the image of God, if that makes sense. And I get asked all the time, like, you say shit and you're a Christian. And it's like, dude, like, say shit, you can say fuck. The issue is disrespect. I think it's 10 times worse to say that person sucks or that person's stupid, that person's an idiot, than it is to say, like, the word shit. Because it's like a curse is when you're cursing someone, when you're saying, like, you are flawed, I don't see the image of God in you, you're worthless. That's dangerous, and that's hell to me. That's satanic, that is to accuse someone, to throw something at them. And, man, yeah, don't even get me started on the negativity of this world. This freaking music scene, dude. Everyone just always putting each other down.
It's true, yeah.
Like, it sucks. And it's cool. I also see a lot of the other differences. I was here with the guys from BandVsArtists, and they're, like, the most positive, most, like, just, like, stoked on whatever. Like, Ghost Key goes out and plays, like, some pretty, some straightforward kind of melodic hardcore jams. And then we come out with our weird, I don't even know what music we're playing. And they're just into all of it, dude. And then they go up and they play, like, an interesting mix of, like, thrash music with some really catchy choruses. And, like, they're just, like, positive. And you can see why they're having so much fun and why people love them so much. Because it's just, like, it's just goodness, dude. It's joy. Those dudes are experiencing real joy. And they don't identify as a Christian band. But, like, I've definitely worshipped to their set before. Just watching them just go crazy and Caleb's jumping around like, holy shit. And it's just like, it's so fun and it's so infectious and it's so real. And I'd say the same about our friends in sport today. Like, man, like, just great musicians having a good time. It's incredible.
All right, good. Awesome, man. And it's funny, you said not to get you started. Well, I do usually, like, have a conversation with you every, like, 6 months or so we could save that for next time.
Yeah.
Totally, man. I love it.
So I guess what are I know you gave a lot of thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts for us before we go? I guess
I feel like I've punished you with enough monologues, man. I feel bad, but
no.
I appreciate you guys having me. I appreciate anyone who's made it through an hour of my very California stoner-sounding voice. I've never smoked weed in my life, and I've been straight edge my whole life. I'm aware that I very much do sound like a stoner, and I don't know why God decided to, like, because I mean, in practice, God to never like take mind-altering substances. I guess I kind of break that with caffeine, but other substances, and for some reason, God decided to make that pact with a kid who would also grow up to sound like a stoner surfer guy. So.
You're just
who knows why?
You're just fitting the metalcore frontman look. You're just doing what you're supposed to be doing as somebody who's on Warped Tour. You're just blending in.
Right, dude.
You're a chameleon.
You're like, Warped Tour, bro. Stay sick. Throw him the shotgun.
When are you actually writing a book about your thoughts on stuff?
A book. I do want to write a book. I don't think it wouldn't be. Yeah, well, I do want to write a book, and I have started writing. And it's in the vein of Silent Planet, of, like, stories and politics and culture and stuff, and it's very much fictional, I think. I would say it's fiction, with a lot of, I think, things that I think are true. But I don't know. I once had a fiction professor tell me that fiction is actually the truest form of writing and the most honest form of writing, which I thought was interesting. And someday I'll elaborate on why she said that. But yeah, I think fiction is very, very honest in a way that a biography or autobiography is not. So, yeah.
All right, so then we'll leave it at that, and we'll save that for next time. But
awesome.
I think I checked your tour schedule. You guys, you're not going to be stopping through New York City, right, this time around?
No, I don't know. I know that Warped does a few New York dates, like one's in Syracuse and one's in somewhere else in New York, right? But I don't know the closest one. Is it in, like, Long Island area?
I'm not sure. I know Syracuse is like 8 hours from us.
Syracuse is far. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah. I know Syracuse is
sorry,
up
I won't be
north,
seeing you.
I think there's a warp date, and I feel like when I looked it up, so I'm curious. I never heard. It's one of those very very unique names. I think it's a native name, and I think that it's I looked it up. It looked like it was in like Long Island or like Amityville area.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. But obviously, something like Warp definitely wouldn't be like in New York City because just it needs so much space.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I guess until the next time I see you in person or have a conversation with you on the phone, I guess we'll figure that out then. But thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
on the
thank
podcast.
you.
Thank you.
Everyone, again,
it's
if you just decide to listen to the end of the podcast, we spoke to Garrett Russell of Silent Planet. I almost call you Silent Garrett all the time because of Twitter.
That's fine. I've definitely
Silent Garrett guy.
Call me that.
But
call me that before.
All right. Well, thanks so much, man. Thanks for sharing your heart with us. And
thanks. Thank you for having me.
Can't wait for this album to drop and to see what kind of feedback you guys got. I haven't heard it yet. I gotta. I guess I'll tell Jerry to hit me up with a link. But
Oh yeah. Or you can text me. I can just send it to you. There's this. We made like an ink blot movement for every video with like the lyrics, kind of how we did with Psychoscape.
Okay.
And so I have a whole video of just one continuous video of the whole album. So I can send that to you. It's like a Vimeo link.
All right, I'll text you because I definitely want to hear it. But again, thanks for coming on, man, and good luck with this upcoming tour and the record, and
Thank you.
Keep killing it, man. Thank
you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we'll be talking soon. Thank you for having me on your podcast, and in advance for listening to our album. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Have a good night.
All right, see ya.
You too, brother. Hey, bless you guys. Bye.
All right, bye. You too. All right, so that was Garrett Russell of the hard rock band Silent Planet. They have a new album coming out on July 1st, and that was a really intense, insightful, and very awesome interview, Patrick.
That it was. He was a very bright young man. He's definitely very well read, very well educated, and as you said, very insightful. I think that was one of the most in-depth interviews we've had this far.
Yeah, we only asked him like 4 questions too. We got a whole hour. I mean, we branched off on it. Of course, Dylan misses all the good things that we do. So sorry, Dylan, but that's our shout out quota for the day. We had Dylan and we mentioned Ricky.
We mentioned Ricky too, yeah. So that's 2. That's it.
I'm not sure who our next interview will be. We have a couple people that I'm working on with no determined dates of when they will be joining us on the podcast. But I will say that, as always, we're just going to keep getting more and more really cool people and having awesome conversations about things that really matter and are relevant and are interesting to everybody. I mean, because they're interesting to us, and we'd like to think that you guys would be interested in what we're interested in.
And I'm sure it's nice for people to kind of get inside the minds of the artists that they like. I mean, that's really what this podcast is all about. And to I mean, especially with Garrett, to get that much of what he thinks and believes is probably, it's not something you can see in a regular interview. It's much more in depth.
Yeah, and like we joked about, lots of interviews is like, what's the name of your band?
Yeah.
What's the name of your album? Where's the concept from? How did you do this? These are all things you can Google and or read in another article, or they're just the generic questions that a lead singer, actor, whoever you are, is probably answering 50 times a day on every interview that they do. So we want to make sure that we are never that person, and we'll just come out and ask a broad question like, how do you prove God exists? Which that probably doesn't happen in an interview in Rolling Stone magazine. So we're just gonna do that because, and this isn't a Christian podcast or a podcast where we talk about theology, but it's something that everyone sort of has an opinion on, and you kind of pick and choose who you want to have these conversations with. So anyway, this has been the BandVsArtists podcast. I am Justin.
This is Patrick.
And Dylan, we pour one out to you, pour one out to the homies. Garrett, yes, your name's Garrett. I almost said Silent Garrett again. Garrett, again, thanks for joining us. Check out Silent Planet. They're awesome. And that's it. We'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.
See you. Colourful marshmallows. Oh, the BandVsArtists podcast is brought to you by none other than Lucky Charms. Oh, they're magically delicious.
Please don't sue us.